Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to use eyelets punched into your fabric to create lace-up closures. I love this technique. We've used it on the Boomer Falls jacket on the cuff of the sleeve, and then I have it on a new dress pattern which is also from the Outback Libby collection called Mindil Beach. So for this pattern, it is the back opening of the bodice, and there's eyelets placed at center back, and then you lace it up using cording or twill tape, and it's a cute added detail on the back of that dress. You can also use eyelets just as a decorative detail where you'd punch the hole and secure the eyelet and then just leave it as is, not for lacing or any type of closure. I did this early on in one of my designs. Back in 2008, we had a whole collection of outfits that were inspired by Hannah Montana. The crop jacket pattern originated from that collection, and it had eyelets along the center front placket that were placed as a decorative detail to mimic the look that was on a jacket that she actually wore. On that pattern specifically, that center front placket is pretty thick, so we've specified in that pattern to use eyelets that also have a washer that comes in the package. So it secures that eyelet into that punched hole really nicely from both the front and the back side and really sandwiches in all those layers of fabric. For the lace-up closure on the back of the Mindil Beach dress, you can use either an eyelet with a washer that secures it from the back or just a simple eyelet because it's not very many layers of fabric. Although that eyelet detail is used for a functional lace-up closure, it's probably a good idea to have an eyelet that has a washer on the back just for extra durability. Okay, so let's jump on in and get started. I'll show you how to use an eyelet setting tool called a Crop-o-Dile to punch the holes and set the eyelets into your fabric. Now we're going to go ahead and put the eyelets into the back opening of this dress. The finished product will look like this. You have a row of eyelets, and here we have 5 on each side because these are pretty small. It can fit an 1/8 inch or narrower cording or twill tape through these eyelets. If you choose to use larger eyelets like a 1/4 inch or a little bit bigger, you could space them just 4 down each side, and then that way you can use a wider cord if that's what you have. So to get started, you'll have your dress sewn up to the point at which the back has been top stitched and is ready for the placement of the eyelets. So for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do this using a tool called a Crop-o-Dile. So it's kind of like a big, huge pair of pliers, and it has a hole punch on each end up here. And you can see when I pull this down, you can see those start to come through. So the one on this side is for the larger eyelet, and the one on this side is for the smaller eyelet. So I'm going to use this one down here for my 1/8 inch eyelet. And then this portion in the middle has the prong right here that fits over the eyelet, and you press this down and it'll sandwich the fabric in the eyelet, and that's what sets the eyelet right here. So these down here are for the hole punch, and this right here is where you set the eyelet. Now to do this step, I'm going to use the pattern piece which has the 5 holes marked on it, and I'm just going to punch those out with this tool, or you could use a hole punch. So I'm going to slide that right in there, and you can see that that's about to come down right on that hole, and it punches right through. So then I have a hole right there. So I'm just going to do that for all 5, and we'll go ahead and punch a hole along each one of those markings. Now I have 5 holes punched through the back of that pattern piece, and I'm going to use this as my guide to mark the spots on the fabric where those holes will need to be placed. So I'm just going to set this pattern piece right on top, and all these stitching lines would be where my finished stitching is. So I'm going to line that up just like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mark right in here with a pencil. And for this illustration, I'm trying to use a brightly colored orange pencil so you can see clearly what I'm doing. Now we have our 5 markings on the back of one of the sides. So to make sure that these line up exactly right, I'm just going to take my dress and fold it in half – with the inside of that back facing each other. And I'm going to put a few pins in here just to secure that so it doesn't slide around, but I'm going to do it lining up my top and my bottom corners at center back. And I'll put the pins back here just out of the way, but it helps hold that whole piece together. So I have that secured like that, and then these are lined up, and that way I can punch my hole at exactly the same place. So I'm going to start with this center hole just to make sure I have it spaced right, and I have the smaller side of the punch, and I'm going to put that right over there, and you can see your fabric through there. So I'm just going to pull that tight with my fingers. And then you can see where that's coming down to make sure that it's placed properly. And then you punch that through. So now I have a hole there, and I also have a hole on the other side, and you can trim off the little bit of excess with your scissors. So then we'll just continue to do that for all 5 holes. Once I have all those holes punched on the other side, I'll just check for any loose remaining fabric that's hanging, and we'll just trim that off. You can pull all these pins out now. So now we have 2 sets of the holes punched, and then we'll go ahead and set the eyelets. Now, depending on the type of fabric that you've chosen, you may want to apply a little bit of fray check around each hole just to prevent it from fraying and to give it a little bit of added stability. Now, for this one right here, we've chosen a 2-part eyelet. So we have the washer and the eyelet, and they're going to go one on each side of the fabric. So you're going to take your eyelet and slide that in on the top side, and this will be the outside finished side of the dress. And then on the inside, you're going to take that washer and you're going to set it down on top like that, and then the 2 will wrap around each other. Now you'll notice on the tool it shows you which end each part of the eyelet goes on. So if this is the shape of your eyelet and you're using a 1-part eyelet, it fits over this little nub right here. So I have the eyelet slid in through the front, and the washer is on the back, and I'm trying to hold the whole thing so that I can do this with one hand. But you're going to slide this over that nub right there, and you have the eyelet, the fabric, and then the washer. And then as you press down this whole entire thing, you press pretty hard from the handle side, and then when you release it, you have the eyelet, and then the washer is on the back right here, and that just gives a nice smooth finish right there on the back. Then you'll just go ahead and continue to place all of the eyelets and the washers along the back of the garment. Now we have all the eyelets set in place, and you can see on this one, that's the right side, and then this is the wrong side. And I have an 18-inch long piece of 1/8 inch wide twill tape, and I'm just going to feed that through so that I have the base where it starts and it ties up at the top. So we'll just push that through each hole and then lace that up, crisscrossing all the way up. Then once you get to the top, you can either pull those laces through from the front or the back, depending on how you want to tie your bow. So for this one, I'm just going to pull it right through the back, and you just tighten those up, and this you would do once it's on the doll. Like this, and then we'll just tie her little bow. And there you have a lace-up closure on the back of a dress. And you could just trim these once you've tied it, but I wouldn't trim them too short so that when you want to untie it and take the garment off, you still have enough tail left on there to tie your bow. Here we have an example of that cropped jacket with the grommet or eyelet detail that's up the center front placket on both sides. So this is just a great example of a two-part eyelet versus a one-part eyelet. So on this jacket, we've used a two-part eyelet, and it has a much more substantial look to it. It's a little bit larger eyelet. So here is the front side, and then on the back side, it's fully enclosed because it has that washer. So you don't have any raw fabric. It's not going to pull out. It's pretty sturdy and substantial all the way through there. And because this is 2 layers of fabric folded back over on top of itself, and this is a heavier weight fabric, it's 4 pieces of fabric that eyelet had to go through to create that look. So here's an example of a different sample of that when we were testing out our process of the eyelets. So on this one, you can see from the front it looks pretty much the same, but on the back you can see here where there is not enough eyelet to grab through all 4 layers of fabric. So on most of this lining fabric or this facing fabric is working its way out of those eyelets, and you can see that there. So it just doesn't have quite of a clean finish on the inside for that eyelet portion. For this example, I'm just going to show you how to use a one-part eyelet, and this is on that sleeve cuff of the Boomerang Falls jacket. So for this, we're going to use the Crop-o-Dile again. We have eyelets right here, just one-part eyelets, and then I have the holes marked on this side right here. You can see those marked, and then the holes punched on this side of the sleeve right here. And I've tested on another piece of fabric to see which hole punch, the small or the large, works best with this eyelet. So to make sure that it's a tight fit, I've used this smaller punch, and then I'm just going to go ahead and push this eyelet through and just make sure that I don't have any fabric snagged on this back side of here. So if you look at this from the side, you can see that we have quite a bit of eyelet that pokes all the way through. This fabric is only 2 layers of fabric. It's not very thick, so there's plenty of eyelet to roll back over when we set that, and it pushes that down to secure that to the inside of this cuff. So to set this eyelet, I'm going to place it right on top of this little nub right here. And then I just make sure that it's tight. And then I crimp that down as tight as I can. And then you can see right here that eyelet is placed on there. And then on the back side, it's curled all the way around that opening. So that's how you would attach or secure a one-part eyelet to your fabric. Using eyelets as an added design detail on your sewn garments is a really great way to help your pieces stand out in the crowd. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've learned some new tips and tricks for how to use them and how to place them on your garments. I'd love to see the pieces that you create, so go ahead and jump on over to the Facebook group and share with us the things that you've created using eyelets.